Greetings, fellow adventurers. Today, our destination is Stormwind Capital City, where we'll assist the gnome community in resolving a troubling case. Take a seat, relax, and enjoy the tale. Following my recent expedition to the Ironforge Mountains, I boarded the Deep Run tram, a remarkable gnomish engineering marvel that connects the two largest cities within the Alliance. My purpose in Stormwind was to seek the assistance of the city's esteemed scholars in deciphering a challenging scroll, one that held the key to locating the Ironbeard tomb. While in the human capital, I seized the opportunity to pay a visit to an old gnome companion of mine, Pip the Wise. He was an elderly gnome mage who had retired and was now leading a peaceful life in the capital city. Our reunion was supposed to be a warm one, a chance to reminisce about the past and catch up on life's intricacies. But upon arriving at Pip's house, an unsettling feeling crept over me. Pip, typically a warm and chatty fellow, appeared gloomy today. I offered to venture out to one of the city's numerous taverns, hoping to soothe the evident unease in the room. However, Pip declined, and his reluctance unveiled the disquiet that had gripped him.
My dear Cedric, I must confide in you, for I find myself gripped by fear. Over the past few weeks, a disconcerting pattern has emerged in the streets of Stormwind. Several gnomes, my fellow kin, have vanished under peculiar circumstances. Desperate as we are, we reported these disappearances to the Stormwind authorities, but alas, their efforts have been stifled by the tumultuous events plaguing the kingdom. Investigations have stalled, and a shroud of inaction blankets the city, leaving us vulnerable and afraid. We dare not venture beyond our homes anymore.
He continued, and I could sense in his voice the despair.
Cedric, I implore you to lend your skills to our plight. Stormwind City has forsaken us, and we are in dire need of your assistance. The only fragment of a clue that I possess is that the most recent gnome to vanish, a gnome named Dipsy, was last seen heading to the Shady Lady, a clandestine establishment nestled within the Dwarven district. It is owned by a dubious figure, Quincy Cutler. If any untoward event transpired, I believe it must have occurred within those walls.
Pip was an old friend, and I felt a deep sense of sympathy for him. Needless to say, I agreed to help him and his kin.
One more thing, Cedric. I don't know if it could have any impact, but all these gnomes were heavily bearded. I know it seems stupid, but this is all I have. Good luck.
My task was clear. I would investigate the disappearances of these gnomes and do my best to unravel the mystery. The initial step of my investigation was to reach the Shady Lady. There, I would attempt to question individuals to gather any possible clues about Dipsy. The city streets were buzzing with activity, and the rest of the citizens seemed unaffected by the recent events.
Hey, good sir. A fine dwarf like yourself deserves a top-notch trim. Care to step inside and experience a truly rejuvenating shave?
I politely declined the barber's invitation, but I couldn't help but notice that this little fellow didn't appear to be troubled by the recent events. The Shady Lady was tucked away in the Dwarven district. As I pushed the creaky door open, a musty aroma of damp wood and spilled ale wafted through the air. The room was bathed in a soft amber glow, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. I began my inquiry by posing questions to the bartender. The gathered information painted a picture of Dipsy, the missing gnome, being involved in some questionable dealings. Furthermore, I learned that on the night of his disappearance, a witness had observed Dipsy engaged in a heated argument with a dwarf, just moments before he vanished. By chance, the dwarf in question happened to be present at the tavern that day. With resolve, I confronted him about his altercation with Dipsy.
I swear on the mountain's beard, Master Dwarf, I didn't lay a finger on Dipsy. It's just that he owed me some coin, you see. So I gave him a little nudge to remind him, but I ain't no murderer. Often customers ain't good for business after all. And truth be told, I was a bit too far gone that night. Asked the bartender. I conked out right at the bar.
It was abundantly clear that while this individual might have a dubious past, he couldn't be held responsible for all the disappearances. The Shady Lady and its equally shady customers were not the culprits behind this mystery. I found myself back at square one, wondering just what had happened to poor Dipsy. As I left the tavern, making my way back to Pip's house, a ragged beggar approached me, extending a trembling hand and pleading for a coin. I was not inclined for charity and promptly declined. As I distanced myself from him, I could hear his grumbling.
Damn dwarves and gnomes, they're all the same. At least you can say no, not like that gnome from yesterday.
I froze in my tracks. Could he be talking about Dipsy? What are you talking about? Tell me what happened with this gnome last night.
Oh, suddenly interested, are you? Well, that gnome promised me his change after he got his fancy haircut at the barbershop, but he never showed up. He must have sneaked out through some secret exit or something, because I was right here all night till the shop closed and I never saw him leaving.
My blood ran cold as a chilling realization washed over me. I had seen that barber before on the street, and despite the recent events, his behavior was unusually calm for a gnome. Could he be involved in Dipsy's disappearance? This would also align with Pip's description of the missing gnomes having substantial beards. And such beards would likely necessitate trimming. I needed answers, and fast. A plan began forming in my mind. Here's a gold coin. I'll give you 2 more, but only if in 5 minutes from now you manage to distract the barber and get him to step outside his shop. Stall him for as long as you can.
Aye, Sir Dwarf. I'd do anything for you, especially for them 2 shiny golds.
Leaving the beggar behind, I swiftly made my way to the barber shop. Could I truly place my trust in this destitute beggar for such a crucial task?
Ahoy there! You've decided to drop by, have ya? Well then, step on in, and let me work my magic with those razor-sharp instruments of mine on that impressive beard of yours.
I settled into the chair, attempting to appear natural, but my growing unease was becoming harder to conceal.
Is everything all right, Master Dwarf? I know that these razors have a reputation for being able to cut more than just a few whiskers, but today, I promise, they're only here for the beard-trimming duties.
Where was that hired vagabond of mine? He should have initiated the diversion by now. But all of a sudden, the shop was bombarded with the sound of ripe fruit smashing against its walls. My recent acquaintance was enthusiastically showering the barber shop with rotten tomatoes.
By the Tinker's tools, what the hell is going on?
The barber immediately rushed outside and started sprinting after my decoy. This was the critical moment. The distraction wouldn't last long. I needed to hurry and search for clues, but I was uncertain about where to start. The ground floor was the barber shop itself, and it seemed unlikely that I would find anything here. However, there was a staircase at the far end of the room. Perhaps I could discover something upstairs. Still, I couldn't ignore the risk that he might catch me there. If he was indeed behind the disappearances, I would be in serious trouble. I hurriedly ascended the stairs and entered the barber's bedroom, frantically searching through his belongings. Unfortunately, I found nothing related to the missing gnomes. Just old books, dirty clothes, and scrolls detailing the financial records of the barber shop. My hope dwindled until a subtle detail in the corner of my eye seized my attention. Over in the far corner of the room, the floorboards appeared to be slightly ajar. As I approached and investigated further, I realized that the floorboards were indeed loose. Carefully, I lifted them, and what I uncovered would forever haunt my memory. Hidden within the floor, I discovered the skeletal remains of the missing gnomes. This was the damning evidence I needed. The barber was undeniably responsible for their disappearances. He had killed these innocent gnomes. With a sense of urgency, I quickly replaced the floorboards, making sure they appeared undisturbed, and rushed downstairs. I prayed that the barber hadn't returned yet. Thankfully, he was nowhere to be found, so I sprinted as fast as my legs could carry me to find the nearest Stormwind patrol. After my revelations, the barber was promptly apprehended. Subsequent investigations conducted by the Stormwind authorities uncovered his troubled past. He was a Gnomeregan refugee who had succumbed to the toxins that plagued the city, ultimately driving him to madness. It was revealed that he had become a staunch supporter of Sicko Thermoplug, which had fueled his growing animosity towards the regular gnomes. Since his arrival several months ago, he was implicated in the murders of 7 gnomes. He would entice them with the promise of being the only gnomish barber in the city. Then, while innocently trimming their beards, he would ruthlessly slit their throats. And so concludes the investigation into the disappearances within the Stormwind gnome community. May this story serve as a reminder that even in the heart of a bustling city, darkness can lurk in unexpected places.